Ladies and gentlemen, today's recipe is cinnamon rolls, and I'm going to teach you how to make a batch of the most delicious, wonderful goodies that you'll ever try. Howdy folks, this is Texas Cooking Today. Guess what? You found one of my tutorials. Now the tutorial versions are a little bit longer, but they've got a lot of information in them, okay? If you're not interested in saturated information recipe videos, you might check out the previous episode. That's just the recipe. It's a lot shorter than this one. But this, if you had any questions, we'll definitely answer all of them. Now let's get in the kitchen and enjoy it. Oh, by the way, check this out behind me. This is Texas Cattle Drive, and this is in downtown Dallas. It's a beautiful bronze sculpture. You need to come and see it. Today, I'm going to be making some cinnamon rolls. Last night I sat up, came up with a beautiful recipe just to make a fantastic tasting cinnamon roll. So here I am. I'm going to do this recipe for the very first time right here in front of you, and we'll find out what it produces. But I think in the end, you're going to have the most delicious tasting cinnamon rolls that you've ever had in your life. I prepared this recipe specifically for this show and for this particular dish. I drew from some of my other recipes. I started with a German white bread recipe, modified it so it would make a fantastic dough for cinnamon rolls, and then modified my filling so that it's a little richer, more full-bodied, and gave it a special glazed topping that's going to be wonderful tasting because it has some extra flavor in there. So we're going to be balancing three wonderful flavors, which is our cinnamon, of course. We're going to use some nuts, and we're going to use a background flavor that's going to set it all off and make it delicious. Now I've been busy measuring out the ingredients. They're all sitting right over here. We're going to take a look at the process of doing the setup, and then we're going to get right into the ingredients. So folks, let's take a quick look at that. One of the most important things that we do when it comes to cooking is making sure that we have everything set up before we get started heating, mixing, or whatever. We call this the setup method. And the idea there is have everything measured out into bowls in the right proportions before you start cooking. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So what I've decided is to go ahead and just run all of this. This is something I normally don't show, but I wanted to show you measuring out all of the ingredients the way I would normally do it before one of my shows. Now folks, this is exactly what I do when I'm cooking for myself. I get everything set up first. I don't want to be busy burning something while I'm focused on measuring something out or making some other preparation. So I do all of the what's called garde-manger work, which is the cold prep. I get all of that taken care of in advance. All of the chopping, cutting, slicing, measuring, everything gets prepared and measured out and put into bowls long before the cooking process ever starts. By doing this, you control quality in your own kitchen. Instead of having mistakes or burned foods or things like that, you have everything perfect. And that was all because you were able to focus on your cooking due to the fact that you took all of your ingredients and measured each one of them out into individual bowls in advance. This is the way we do cooking in any professional kitchen, and honestly folks, it's really the way you need to do cooking in your kitchen. So what you've just seen is the setup method, and it's important that we measure everything before we begin cooking anything. That way, I'm not busy trying to do one thing while something else is left unattended and goes wrong. All right, so this allows you to do better quality cooking. It also allows you to bring structure to the cooking environment, and it's very important. What we have for this dish is flour, milk, eggs, yeast, salt, sugar, and some butter. And that's going to make our dough. For the filling though, over here we have two different kinds of sugar. I've got some brown sugar right over here, some granulated sugar. I have some nuts, and I'm going to break those down so that they're just broken pieces. That's pecans, and some cinnamon, and of course butter once again, and that's going to be used to make a fantastic filling that'll really set these cinnamon rolls off. Over here in the center there are three more bowls. I have back here some confectioner sugar. Guys, that's the powdered stuff, all right? Some milk and some bourbon. And with those ingredients, we're going to be making a fantastic tasting cinnamon roll. Now I've gone ahead and cracked my eggs. I've got my butter unwrapped and everything on the wet side is ready to go. On the dry ingredients, I like to go ahead and get those mixed in to my flour. This is a neat way of doing this, guys, and you're going to see a lot of recipes that'll tell you to put your yeast in the milk and stir it and let it puff up and rise and that kind of stuff. That's an old technique called proofing, and with modern yeast that's dated, it's really not such a relevant thing. But putting yeast and salt directly against each other isn't such a good thing. So what I do is start by putting the yeast and sugar, the yeast loves sugar, together on that, and I just give it a little stir to get it worked in. Okay, then I add my salt, sprinkling it over the top, and work that in. And what this does is it keeps me from having any clumps of anything. There's not too much of any one thing in any area. Something that needs to be mentioned: if you want to make the dough itself a little more unique in its flavor profile, you can add a quarter of a teaspoon to a half a teaspoon of cinnamon to the dough. I would say stay on the small side. Go with quarter teaspoon on your first batch. You're going to like what that does for it. I'm going to leave it without because I want the dough to have more of a basic bread flavor to contrast with my filling. We have everything set up with the mixer. Now folks, if you have one of these machines, I'm going to say you're very wise to go ahead and use it. It'll save you some arm work. It helps to speed the development of the gluten of the dough, which is important in this case because we want it to be elastic, remember. So I want to start putting my milk right down in here. One of the reasons I got a mixer, when I was young, I had a bread machine, and I decided, I loved making bread, but I wanted to do more of a homespun breads. So I decided I needed a mixer for that purpose. And that was when I got my first mixer, and that's this guy right here. It's been running for many years, and I'm quite proud of it. Definitely a good investment for your kitchen. So now that I have my egg and my milk fully mixed, I'll use a measuring cup as a scoop and start gently working in my flour. Now when you do this, you want that at a slow speed. Otherwise, it's going to throw your ingredients out and you're going to have a big mess. There's no rush with this, okay? So as I go, I'm going to start incorporating some of my butter as I do my flour. As you can see how that has formed into a ball. It's even pulling up out of the bowl. And what I'm looking for is a dough that's slightly sticky and elastic. Guys, this looks like a sticky, elastic dough, but I think it needs a few more minutes of kneading, and I'm going to give it just that. The dough has finished mixing. It's beautiful. I just need to get something to rise it in. Now, the reason I don't use the pan that I put the dough in, or to mix the dough in, is because this is metal, and dough doesn't react good when it's put against a metal surface. it needs to be against a glass or ceramic surface, because the yeast in dough doesn't get along with metal, okay? Metal will inhibit the growth of the yeast. So we use glass. Now, I have put some cooking oil in this, as you've seen, and I'm just going to take my dough and kind of work it around in there so that it's all the way around on the sides, and get the dough itself covered. There we go. And this will just help to keep it from sticking as much on the side of this bowl as it would. When I'm choosing a pan for my cinnamon rolls, what do I use? A rectangle, a square, a round, little ones? There are options, folks. There's a lot of different options. Now, you've seen this a lot, probably. If you've been looking at different recipes, you've probably seen a lot of people using a rectangular pan. And this works really well. Gives you a high side for those rolls to rise up against. It contains them in one pan, nice and neat. I think the round pan looks good too, because you can do one in the middle and then put rolls around the sides. Also, think about this. What if you did a 1x1 in a nice little souffle ramekin? What a wonderful way to do an individual serving for a cinnamon roll. It gives you more of that browned crust too. So if you're one of those that likes that crusty edge, you might want to consider doing individual dishes. All kinds of neat ways to make this dish. Now we've placed it in a warm location. I have a standing pilot on this old stove, so I'm going to use this spot, and I'm going to put something over it to keep it from going dry on the top of that dough. The other thing you want to remember when you're going to be making something like this, if you don't have a bowl to invert, put a piece of plastic wrap over it. That will work fine also. But give this lots of time. There's no rush on this, guys. That needs to develop, and it can only happen through time. So we're going to give it plenty of time to rise up, to fill that lower bowl, and once it's full, then we move on to our next step, which is making the filling and getting the whole cinnamon rolls laid out and rising on their own. If you have whole pecans like I do, then we need to break those pecans to work well in this. So I'm going to put them down in here, and some of those are already broken, but I have a bunch of whole ones. So I'm going to put those in a bag. I'm going to take something hard and break them. So I'm just finding the bigger pieces and eliminating them at this point. There we go. We have broken pecans to use in our cinnamon rolls. Doesn't that look nice? A good way to do that. I have finished the rise on this. It has risen up nice. And guys, it took some time. It was a slow thing. I think I had this rising for a couple of hours, and that's not unusual. Now look though, look at all those air pockets underneath, and see how well it filled this up. It's more than doubled in bulk. So all I need to do now is just kind of roll this out. There shouldn't be much of a problem in that. And once I get it kind of rectangular, then we're going to take it and line it with our filling. Before I go putting down all of these items for my filling, I want to go ahead and combine them. And that's what I have this larger bowl for. Get my brown sugar in this. I want to break that up. I want to go ahead and get my nuts down in here. And I'm just working all that stuff together, guys. Go ahead and get my sugar in this. There we go. Next, the cinnamon. Work that over it. Now you may get some lumping with that brown sugar, and that's not a problem. Just go ahead and break those lumps up, and if you need to use your hands to do that, you can do that, guys. It won't hurt a thing. See there? There we go. Now I have a beautiful crumbly filling. A beautiful cinnamony, sweet, sugary, and chock full of nuts filling for those cinnamon rolls. Before rolling that dough out onto this board, I like to just gently flour, and that way, if I have flour down on my board, I don't have to worry about the dough sticking to it. There we go. There we are. There's a little dough left around the edges. I'll just pull that out and add it to it. Now to begin with, I'm just going to press this out by hand, forming the basic shape that I need, which is going to be a rectangle. And you can see that the use of a rolling pin isn't absolutely necessary. You can use them, they're nice, but it isn't going to be life-changing if you don't, okay? To make this go a little smoother, I'm going to add a little bit of flour to the top of this. All right. Now what I have here is a dough that is rich in butter, and it has a lot of fat, okay? As a result of that, it makes it feel rather oily to work with. It isn't just that cooking oil that we used. Now that I have this rolled out, the next thing I want to do is get my filling in here, and then we're going to get it rolled up. Now before I get my butter and the other toppings on this, my filling actually, I want to go ahead and just kind of even up the shape of this a little bit. And what that's going to do is just going to give me more even rolls across the board. So first thing I want to do, I want to use a cutting wheel. You can use a knife for this also. And I'm going to remove some of the excess off of these edges, just to bring about a little bit more square effect. And we don't have much loss that way. And what I'm using here is actually a pasta wheel. You can use a pizza cutter, a knife, whatever you'd like. So that's going to even that up. Not perfect, but it gets it a little bit better, and it's going to be nice this way. So yeah, and that is why we need that butter at room temperature. It has to be spreadable, right? There we go. Okay, without obsessing over it, we're going to call that pretty close to even, and I'm going to call it right there. Let's go ahead and take that filling and generously apply this all the way around. So you can see how this method of combining these ingredients beforehand allows a more even spread when you go placing it on top of your dough. Starting with this back edge, I want to fold it. Just start rolling it inward. Okay. It'll look like that filling is going to bunch up and roll off on you. Don't let that worry you. I'm lifting and rolling. See there? Lift, lift. I'm not rolling it this way, I'm lifting up. And what that's doing is it's allowing that filling to be taken into that roll. Now I can make cross cuts on this, and what I want to do is start in the middle and kind of work out making even cuts. So your cinnamon rolls, simple enough, are going to be as thick as you decide to make them. Now some people like to divide these up. I go for about 1 inch to 1.25 inches thick cut, or maybe up to 1.5 inches. This is about 1.25 inches right here. There we go. And I have one here that's a little bit long. We're not going to worry about that because I have another use for it. So what I'm going to do here is to line out my pans, and I'm not going to use all, but some of my pans. If they seem a little messy, don't let that bother you. Just pull them together and get them up in your pan. There we go. Now guess what? That's only one of mine. Okay, I'm going to be rising this in one location, and I've got some other little ones. Now I wanted my pan covered in plastic wrap, or as I like to call it, sticks only to itself wrap, as it's showing us right here. But once you get it down, pull those corners and then stick it to itself, since that's the way it likes to work. Right there and there. There we have it, all covered. Okay, I've got those ready to be risen up. This one under its plastic wrap, and that one over there under its little glass dome, rising it the same way I did the dough in the first place. So here you see two different presentations. One that's nice for a table serving. They're all in a pan together. You serve out, communal kind of thing. And the other, which is individuals in their own little dishes. How neat. What a wonderful way to get your cinnamon roll in its own special little cup. These have been rising now for, I think mine have been rising for about 90 minutes. Yours may rise faster or a little slower, just depending on the conditions and you know, a myriad of different reasons. As you can see, we've gotten some really good rising on this. It's really nice. Those have kind of fattened up. They're pressed up against each other on those two here that barely fit in there together before, and now these are swelling up beautifully. And this thing, which was just what I had left over, rolled up with what I had left over, is all ready to go. Over here I have that round. Now that has just absolutely totally packed that pan full, and I wanted to get you a good close-up on this so you can see. When I first loaded that pan, those were barely touching each other, and some of them weren't touching each other at all. And if you'll notice now, they are mashed against each other tight, and they have filled up most of the cracks and crevices of that pan. Okay, down in the oven they go. Oh, there we go, down in the oven. Now we just got to give that some time to bake. That's going to be about 25 to 35 minutes. We're going to check them as we cook them. In about 25 minutes, I'll take a look at them. I want a golden brown color. Okay, it's just as simple as that. That's 350 degrees. Now, let's turn our attention to the glaze we're going to need when we take them out of the oven. Come on. Okay, we need to make a glaze to put over this, and that's a matter of milk, our whiskey that we've had sitting out for hours now, so it's had a chance to really lose a lot of its alcohol, and this right here, which is our powdered sugar, and that was 2 cups of that. Now all we need to do is just get this down in here. Started mixing that together, and don't worry, this will actually dissolve down. We'll go ahead and get this in here. Yes. See there? Quite amazing, isn't it? I want to give that sugar just a moment to finish kind of getting soft. And after it gets good and soft and I work it again with my whisk, then I'm going to have it ready to go on top of those beautiful cinnamon rolls. Oh yeah. And then I'm just going to gently drizzle it right down over the top of these. Look at that spiral I make. There we go. Isn't that simple? There we go. And we are glazed. And I can do the same thing to these as well. There we go. A beautiful little glazed topping on each one. As far as the measurements that we used on all of our ingredients, that started with 4 cups of flour, 3/4 of a cup of milk, 2 large eggs, 1/4 of a pound or a full stick of butter. We have some yeast here. That's 2 packets of yeast, which, by the way, guys, equals 4.5 teaspoons if you're measuring it from bulk. Over here we have 1 tablespoon of salt and 1/4 of a cup of granulated sugar. That was to make that fantastic dough that produced those beautiful, beautiful rolls. Now over here, the quantities that I used on the filling, that's 1 stick of butter, 1/4 pound of butter, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. I started with 1 cup of nuts and 3/4 of a cup each of brown sugar and granulated sugar. That beautiful topping that we had right there, those ingredients, that was 2 cups of the confectioner sugar, 2 tablespoons of milk, 2 tablespoons of bourbon. Made a beautiful, beautiful icing for the top. Oh yeah, look at that. Beautiful, beautiful cinnamon bun perfection. The way it should be right there, guys. Oh, dead on, right there. That is so good tasting. This is something that you need in your recipe collection. An excellent recipe. I love turning these things out for y'all. Thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate that so much. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider that. Click the bell. That way I can notify you when the new videos come out. And by the way, so you know, I post on Thursday, every Thursday, usually around 7 a.m. Wonderful recipes, just like this one. Guys, this is some really, really good cinnamon rolls. You need to try this one and you're going to truly enjoy it. I would like to say thank you very much for watching, and if you would, click the like and enjoy your day. Bye-bye. Oh yeah. There it is, ladies and gentlemen, a Texas Cooking Today tutorial. Thank you very much for watching. If you would, please take a look at my channel. There's a lot of recipes there. If you would also please subscribe and click the bell. You'll know when the new videos come out. I post every Thursday. And folks, I would like to say thank you very much for watching Texas Cooking Today.